Imagine you are the primary caretaker and parent of an 8-year-old boy. You do the stay-at-home things your child needs every day. Suddenly your mate decides to leave the marriage and offer the child up to the slaughterhouse family court system. And someone suggests that you're unfit. The judge automatically slices the family in part, removing you from the child, from the home you once shared. The judge then amputates your dignity by making you pay for your emotional loss to your child. And for the coup de grace, forever denotes you to the status of second-class citizen in the world's eye, which we all know in the divorce world as the non-custodial parent. A parent that's not only non-custodial, basically non-existing. And I have with me the victim of this situation, Christian, it's Chocan, is that?
Christian Chocan.
Chocan, okay. And you are threatened at this moment in time. You're in the middle of this mess with your family court. You haven't lost custody, but you're in the middle of fighting for your custody of your child.
Yes, pretty much. You can say that pretty much I lost custody. I'm in the process of losing custody. I already know what the outcome is going to be.
Well, don't give up.
Never will.
No,
that's why I'm here.
You never know. So what got you to this country? Because I know you have an accent, and you told me you were from Romania, and what happened with your wife.
Yeah.
Give us a little quick history.
Originally, I am from Romania. I've lived in America most of my life. I've met my soon-to-be ex-wife, and while I was on vacation in Romania, about 17 years ago, close to 17 years ago, I believed it was, I wanted to share a life with someone. She was a beautiful young lady, had a great time together, and brought her to the United States. This is where we ended up getting married. It was great for as long as it was, like any other marriage, ups and downs. But then it took a turn towards the, I would say, the worst, when we just couldn't see eye to eye on a number of issues. And one thing led to another. We ended up having a child. And
was there a lot of fighting before or after the child was born,
There were a lot of disagreements between us prior to the child being born. Nothing that we couldn't really handle, but there were serious issues at stake. And once the child came into the world, it got worse.
Okay, so this particular point in time, you're trying to defend yourself in court.
Yes.
And you notice that so far there's a lot of difficulty in getting the judge to hear you. You don't really have a voice in the court, right?
Yes, I'm not allowed to speak while I'm and I go to the Bronx Family Court. A particular judge is not allowing me to put my statement on the record, or anytime that I do want to tell, I'll say my side of the story, or at least let's say the truth. Anytime that I am attacked by the other side, I'd like to respond, and I'm not allowed to do that at all.
I want to bring in Gary Jacobs, the president of Americans for Legal Reform, into this conversation. Gary, what could he have? Is there anything he could have done at this point?
Well, he's still in the middle of it, but the problems that I see just from this little bit that he's told me, a lot of problems. First of all, he's being denied due process, because just standing there in court and not speaking is not due process. So he's being denied his constitutional right to due process.
Can he say that he's representing himself and stop the judge from stopping him from talking?
Well, yeah, obviously the judge is standing there in his robe up on the bench and has the possibility of throwing you in jail. But on the other hand, he does need to be coached to preserve the record. Also, the judge can't treat you any differently as a pro se litigant. In fact, as you know, some judges will hold you almost to the standard of an attorney. They'll say you don't get any preferential treatment. But it also works the other way. Because you're pro se, you can't be told you can't speak or make any arguments. What happens in a case like this is what I call a self-directed verdict. So they're just driving him down this road, pretending that he's going to court. The judge has already made up his mind. In fact, he said he feels that way, too. But if none of this is on the record, for example, the other party says something bad about him, and he never has the chance to defend it. So now the record is, this is what was said, and there was no defense to it.
Right.
So what he needs to do is preserve the record by saying, you have to be respectful, even though the judge sounds like he doesn't or she doesn't deserve it. Your Honor, with all due respect, I haven't been able to speak, and I've been denied due process.
Is that how you started?
Yeah.
Your Honor,
with all due respect, I'd like the opportunity to speak. Now, they'll say you'll get your chance to speak. And then if you don't, before they end the record, while the recorder is still going, or the court reporter is still transcribing, you have to say, I'd like the record to reflect that he never had the chance to speak.
Okay, you got that?
But you can't jump in. But you have to be aggressive, because you're going up against an aggressive attorney, I'm sure. And some judges despise pro se litigants. We know this.
Yeah.
We've seen it. They just despise them. They think that they're better than you because they're a lawyer.
They stop the process from
and-
working their way,
right?
which can be a good feature, and that's what I was.
Well, what he's doing, here's the good part. This judge, if he does the right thing and preserves the record, the judge is totally setting this up for an appeal.
Right.
So what you do, and the judges start to realize, okay, this guy spoke to somebody, and he's setting it up, for peppering the record, preserving the record. He's setting this
they
up for
wanna
appeal.
hear, which
And
they
they're going to
wanna
realize it about halfway through, okay, this guy's not as stupid as I thought he was. He's setting me up to go to the appeal. For example, when the judge screams at him, which he had mentioned to me in the green room before we came in, that the judge was raising his voice. Well, the transcript doesn't say that, right? So I would say it on the record. Judge, you're making me nervous by screaming at me. Is there a reason that I'm being yelled at? Did I do something wrong?
Hold on 1 second, Gary. That's what I was saying in the car. If you approach each of these, what do they call them, indiscretions that the judge.
Well, they're breaking the rules.
Yeah, then you
etiquette of the
challenge
court.
them for their place on that. It becomes an appealable position. And
Well,
Right.
the only issue with that is that well, in my case at least, whenever I do want to jump in and become somewhat aggressive, as you mentioned, I'm immediately being shut down just right on the spot. So if I'll say, Your Honor, I'd like to say, I don't know, something, anything that I'd like to respond. Sir, you only speak when you're spoken to. You will not disrespect this court. At times, I may be threatened with contempt of court.
Well, that's good. If they threaten, first, you know,
Or at least get thrown out of court.
that's
At least-
okay.
At
That's
least
good.
that much.
Listen, long as you don't, you can't interrupt. So you have to know that time to slip it in. For example, when the other party says something, as soon as they're done, you'd say, Your Honor, I'd like the opportunity to respond. Now, if the judge moves on and never asks you, then at the end, you interrupt and say, Your Honor, I never had a chance to respond. And he will yell again. It's okay. But if he says, I didn't speak to you, I didn't give you the chance, that's okay. It's on the record that you never got a chance to
can
defend
he take
yourself.
notes for those indiscretions that he feels the judge is making, so that when the time comes,
Yeah, I don't know about. Yeah, he
how
should.
is he gonna
Well,
keep-
first of all, you should have your notes just to keep your thoughts together. I always tell people, go in with notes. When the judge does this, say this. And actually, I like to have somebody read from the paper, because then they think that you spoke to somebody and they told you what to say. So even if you memorized it, pick up the paper and read word for word. Your Honor, with all due respect, I'm being denied due process. I'd like the chance to respond. If he shuts you up and then he yells at you, say, Your Honor, I don't know. You want to get on the record that he's yelling at you.
You can't be intimidated.
But you can't, because it just, what do you have to lose? You're losing, right?
Losing, the only thing that anybody would lose is being put in jail.
Well, that's great. You get a good lawsuit.
Yeah.
You don't get in jail for
Yes.
being denied due process. The judges like to threaten it. If he said, now listen, of course, if the judge,
It's a she.
if she says to you, if you say one more word, you're going to jail. I would say that's a good time to not speak. But it's okay, because you just preserve the record, you order the transcripts, and then you send the transcripts to the chief judge of the Bronx, and you say to the chief judge, I understand you're not the appellate court. I'm not asking you to overrule a decision. No decision has been made, but the rules are being broken. I'm being denied due process.
Buying the
I'm not
minutes are
being treated.
expensive. Can he?
Well, you could.
Poor man.
I don't know. Yeah, you could apply for poor man status. You're not going to get it, because the judge who's got to grant you poor man status is the
her.
one who's
Yeah, it's the same one.
she's the one who's doing that. But that still make the application. But either transcripts aren't so bad, because you can actually, a lot of people don't realize, you can order portions of the transcript. So let's say it's $5.50 a page. All you have to do is bring in that section, which may be 3 pages, $15-20. You don't have to do, I like to do the whole thing, because it gives the whole picture.
Yeah.
And usually they railroad you so fast, it seems like an eternity, but you may be out of there in 10 minutes, which is $50, $100, whatever it is. You know.
So go a little further with where it went with your ex. So now you're separated. You're living in the same building.
Yes, we're currently living in the same
Apartment
building, right? Well, what happened is the child was born, and I ended up becoming the primary caretaker, so I was the one taking care of the
That's
child.
what I wanted to hear you say, right?
So primary caretaker, practically what it means is that you're the one that bathes the child, takes the child to school, feeds him, takes him to the
stay-at-home
doctor.
parent.
You're a stay-home parent, and that's paramount to the decision, the determination, basically, as in custody decisions. That's what judges have to look for. They must look at practically there's a rule that says the primary caretaker is the one that is awarded custody. In my situation, although I was the primary caretaker, it seems that my child was taken away from me, given to my ex, which she in turn gives it to her mother. So the grandmother of the child takes care of the child
This
right
is
now.
not unusual. I know it sounds strange, but it's not unusual. We see this all the time. In fact, one of our members has that happen to him. Very, very, very similarly, and he's been paying child support, and he doesn't have the income, and they're just raking him over the coals and threatening him with incarceration.
Right. In addition to that, as far as the child's concerned, he has life-threatening allergies. This grandmother does not speak English. She cannot call 911. She doesn't know what the child needs. He's diagnosed with an EpiPen. This whole process is just really, really bad. You're talking about a father who stayed home with a child, and you're immediately just taking a child out of his life. And I get to see my child 4 days a month, and I'm in the same building, literally 4 days a month. At first, I was awarded.
Same bill. That's crazy. And
Yeah.
by the way, to go back a minute, you said the grandmother smokes, and that's around the child, and that's something
Yeah.
you would prefer not to have.
Yeah,
and
the-
you can't have any say in it.
I can't have any say in it because the judge cut me off immediately as soon as I mentioned, Your Honor, the grandmother smokes around the child. She said, "Excuse me, sir, smoking is not illegal. Last time I checked, the grandmother is not part of this matter. The jurors will stay impartial in this matter. This is not about the grandmother. This is about the child. This is about what the health of the child, which is the best interest of the child."
Is there any place in law, Gary, that you would know about that would say to, where you would be able to say to the judge, there's a break in the continuity of the way that the child was living. I was taking care of him. I was doing this. Like you said, I was staying home dad. I was right on the spot, Johnny on the spot as a parent. He's not deemed. Did you have a psychological eval? Is there any language he could use to get himself back into the?
Well, I don't know how he ended up getting out. I mean, my advice at the beginning would be don't leave. If you're truly fighting for custody, don't leave. As bad as it is, don't leave the house. Once you're out, you've lost custody. Your 90% of the job is done.
Abuse
so
or
usually people do
domestic
the order of
violence?
protection because they know that, right? That's why they use the silver bullet because once you get this fake order of protection, ex parte, the person's out. Chances are they're not coming
Did
back.
that happen to you? Do you have-
Well, no, we were actually apart already. So we were living apart to begin with.
So you moved out and left the
No.
child?
She moved out and she left the child. So I was the primary caretaker. So she left the child with me.
So what was the thing that changed the decision that the judge said, okay, now that child's being removed and going to her?
It was never changed. It was always like that. The judge practically took the child and gave it to her. It's as simple as that. And we're in the same building. It doesn't make any. It's very, 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 very bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how it happened without a hearing.
Well, no. We've been going at it for about 3 years now. We have been in court for 3 years, so I've never left the court system. I'm still part of it. As far as my ex is concerned, she wants sole custody, physical and legal, that I pay child support and I barely see my child, which she got, but she wanted to stay married. So I filed for divorce in the Supreme Court. So we have two matters. We have a divorce action, and then we have a custody
I
proceeding.
mean, my
in the
advice
family
with
court.
the judge who's not listening, if you have a lot of issues why it's not a good thing, and the judge isn't listening, put it in writing through a motion. This way, at least you preserve the record. And I always put in these type of motions, put the judge on notice. Meaning, this mother, my son has all these issues. The grandmother is watching the child. She doesn't speak English. She can't call 911. And guess what, Judge? If God forbid something happens to my son, Judge, you have blood on your hands because you've been put on notice via this motion because you won't let me say it in court that you are responsible if something happens to my child. That scares the judge.
Well, I'm not allowed to submit any motions
Well,
because
you
I.
can submit a motion now.
But
that's
I
what I
have.
was telling him in the car.
Well, what I have is I've submitted 2 violations of visitation decrees, and immediately, as soon as I did that, she wrote it in a court order that I'm not allowed to submit any more
Yeah,
motions.
but that's no. What it is you have to get prior approval from the court. She didn't say you can't submit motions. I didn't read it, but they can't say that because you have a legal right to do it. What they can do is ask for leave from the court to submit the motions. So you could write to the court and say, this is what I want to submit a motion saying this, that it's putting them in danger. But I wouldn't even do it that way. I would do it through a notice of motion, which goes through paperwork. You don't have to go to the court and have it signed. For example, in order to show cause, or you probably file contempt, you have to go to the clerk sends it up to the judge signs it. A notice of motion is done through submission only. You don't have to get the permission. But if you are barred, then what you do is you ask the court permission. She'll almost 100% of the time give it to you, because it's basically against the law to deny you your right to access to the court unless you've abused it. So as long as you spell out a real reason, if she denies it, you just go right into Brooklyn the next day to the appellate division and say, look, I just want to file this motion. Here's what I want to file. But you have to preserve the record. And even if they denied it and you did it in writing, believe me, they read it, right? So now they're on notice. That judge does not want to be on the front cover of the paper saying, this man filed a motion saying that the kid's at risk. I ignored it, and something, God forbid, happened
So
to the
a
kid.
threshold would be the notice of, what are you calling it? Notice of what?
Well, it's notice of motion.
Notice of motion.
Right, which you don't have to go. You don't have to get permission. I don't know what his decision says, but I know it doesn't say
He doesn't
you
have a
cannot
decision.
file a motion. There's a ruling that maybe says you have to get leave from the court, which means you have to get
I
permission.
thought you could always file a motion. That
Well,
really
sometimes the
surprised
judge
me.
can say that what you're doing is excessive, so they will say sometimes you have to get leave from the court, which just means you go in the court and ask. In his case, where he can't speak,
Well, he doesn't have motion mania. I mean, this would be the first.
I agree, but that doesn't mean the judge couldn't do. They don't. She doesn't want him file whatever reason. She doesn't like
What
him.
did you call the first complaints you had with the system? It was what, a complaint?
Sounds like contempt.
No, we're talking about the visitation.
No.
Well, you said you filed two violations.
Two violations of
Violations.
visitations. Visitation.
Contempt
visitation
order?
decrees.
Were they contempt orders?
No, they were just, well, yeah, they were contempt orders, yeah. They're my, basically, I was not allowed to see the child at my court order visitation day.
Right. So that would be contempt. But if she denied you filing contempt, then I would go to the appellate division.
Well, after the second, the violation is, that's when the judge actually told me, you're not to file any more motions. She put it in writing and said, we will take care of it on trial.
Right.
And
But
that's
if,
about
but
it.
if your kid's at risk, you still can file.
All right.
I mean, to me, that's putting your child at risk. She's with a person who can't call 911. That's a risk
Judges say that all the time about not filing motions.
Yeah,
and
they
stuff.
do.
But
all the time because they don't want
I
to have
was-
to deal with it. But too bad.
I was going to
It's
say
their job.
I was
What
going
do
to
you
say
care?
I didn't know.
I filed 13. Who cares?
Yeah.
Why not? Long as they're legitimate. Now, don't file. Yours are, right? You're saying they
course,
are.
absolutely.
As long as they're legitimate, I say, I don't care. File them away. Let them put me in jail for protecting my child. You have a right to protect your child.
Absolutely.
You have a responsibility, morally and legally, ethically, to protect your child.
And it never goes well enough to know that you're saying to the judge in any which way that you have a right to the authority of the child. You can't use that, right? You can't.
Right. Yeah, because you sort of lost it
Yeah.
already. Sadly.
Yeah.
But you still have to, listen, we all protect any child. If I saw a parent beating a child, even if I just walked down the street, I could intervene and say, hey, stop beating the child.
You have a right to. What's that? Parents' patriae or something. You have a right to parent your child.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean,
Well,
constitutionally,
yeah,
you should.
constitutionally, right, so-
They step all over that here. He has a right to speak in court, too. He
Yeah,
never got his
absolutely.
day in court, right?
Right. Can
Well,
you,
it goes further than that. I think we discussed when this particular judge favors lawyers, the lawyers that are on the adverse lawyer and the law guardian. Literally, both of them have lied about me, and I submitted a
keep going.
I submitted a
Complaint?
complaint against the
Judicial Review Board?
well, it's the grievance committee.
A grievance committee?
Yeah, the adverse lawyer lied about a judge's decision, this particular judge's decision, claiming that I disallowed my child to go on vacation with her client, where in fact I did not, and she impeached herself. This lawyer impeached herself in an email back to me, claiming that I never disallowed my child to go on vacation with his mom, and
The Wild Wild West. They do everything.
well, the other thing, I'm stumbling a little bit because I'm getting a little emotional here, and I'm trying to be.
Is your child.
Yeah. What I mean by this lawyer lied about this particular judge's decision is the judge denied the motion. So the lawyer my ex's lawyer went to my ex, said this guy is not allowing your child to go with you on vacation, when in fact that was never the truth. And she submitted a motion, charged my ex $3,000, I believe you said in the motion, and wants to charge me $6,000 in legal fees, and I never said no, and I have the impeachment email from her. The judge denies the motion, and on the day that my ex wanted to go on vacation with the child, she emailed me at 6:30 a.m., a lawyer, stating that the judge granted the relief that her client is to go on vacation with the child because the judge said so, and I am to obey her order. When in fact, it wasn't true. And 5 hours
It
later,
wasn't true that you weren't letting her, or that wasn't the judge didn't
no,
order that?
the judge denied the motion, and yet this lawyer emailed me claiming that the judge granted the relief. 5 hours later, that was at 6:30 a.m. when I received the email. 5 hours later, she sent an email to the court's attorney, that judge's court's attorney, and she still tried to look for the decision. So she made a conscious, she was cognizant about her actions. I did make a mistake of saying that I was late another time to pick up the child from school, but the type of late that I was talking about is totally different. A couple of minutes being late, but the child is not outside. Meaning, if you have to be at school at 2:15 p.m. and you're at 2:17 p.m., that's
Well, but for the viewers, to learn a lesson from this, never be late.
never be late.
Because
yes.
all you do is you give them a reason.
them reasons
You-
to go
you-
after
what,
them.
and it ends up if they have nothing on you.
They have a rule, though. The schools have a rule to have somebody supervise the kid in that.
Right. I mean, this is not in a normal. Listen,
Right, I get
married
you.
couples
I get
could be
you.
late all the time. But when you're in a divorce case,
Right.
the last thing you want to do is ever be late when you're in a case, because if they have nothing on you,
They got it
and
now.
now they got one little thing. That gets magnified. They take something that has a little bit of truth to it and blow it up. So technically, you are late if you're 1 minute late. But who gives a rat's ass if you're a minute in a normal
No,
situation?
absolutely.
But I'm just saying, you never want to give anybody. If you're going to a visitation for your child, always be early, because that one time you're late, it's going to be magnified. You're going to get text messages documenting that you were late, and who wants to talk about it? Don't give the other party anything to sink their teeth into.
What really bothers me is I am late a couple of minutes, let's say, okay, which every human being is late. But I did not get to see my child on my court order visitation day. So I submitted 2 violations of visitations, and we have not spoken about it. And yet here I am a couple of minutes late.
Right. But we'll see what happens. They take the one thing, and if the judge wants to make you the bad guy, then they use that, and the other one goes nothing. Don't give them anything. But
Let me cross over to something that is a place that he wants to go. He wants to be like advocates like us to disrupt the system. He believes it's unfair system. I would concur. You would concur. We concur.
Right.
There's no question about it. All right, so now we want to do something about that. Meanwhile, he's in the middle of a court case with his son. Would you advise he cross this barrier now or wait?
I tell everybody, don't do it. You got to get your case resolved first, for many reasons.
Don't make it obvious that you're an advocate. You can make it obvious you're still fighting for your son.
Right. You advocate for your son first.
Yeah.
First, it's just so much. You can't help somebody else when you're in this mental state of being in there. Also, when you start posting on Facebook, and then all of a sudden,
Oh, I'm against all that.
now you're radicalized and you're bashing judges. You're better off letting other people support you and telling people, like Americans for Legal Reform, and Chris and I are involved. Hey, I want to get involved. Can you guys help me? By coming with court watchers to the court and learning the ropes. You also have to learn the ropes. You can't do it. You're too close to this case, so you can't see it.
Someday it'll be good for you.
But it's too. I tell people, and listen, some people do. They say, I can't help. I'm going to do it. I want to start now. And that's everybody's got to make. But my advice would be get your own case settled first, because judges don't like advocacy. Every judge is different, but it sounds like your judge, has a psychological problem. She's probably a narcissist. Probably shouldn't even be on the bench.
Absolutely.
So some of these people, when you fight back, they just strike back at you. Some judges, and they get it. They go, this guy's busting my chops.
They usually will abuse their powers, by the way, because they think and they usually are correct, can intimidate you out of your fight.
But to the good extent, what I tell people is, once you're over that spot where you're going to lose, you got nothing to lose, fight the judge, piss them off, because that's when they do something stupid. I would say more than 80% of the time, they finally do something stupid when you fight back, and that gives you grounds to either have them a mistrial, have them removed, turned it over on appeal. Judge McNulty, she was a sick bitch, this judge. And by me getting in her face all the time, because I realized I had nothing to lose. I used to say I could drop my pants and piss in her face. What would be any worse? She rules against me all the time and hates men. So who cares? But when I started fighting back, she would get up and say, "You're an idiot. I'm ruling on your case and you're doing this." Well, she's sending a
just
thinly
sent the
veiled
message.
threat
That
that
was
she's
the
biased.
message.
Boom, grounds for an appeal.
Yeah.
I was told to not act like a lawyer.
Right.
By the
What do
judge.
you mean
Don't
act
act
like
like a lawyer. Don't act like a
Right.
lawyer. Didn't I tell you not to act
So
like
she's
a lawyer?
calling you names. Listen,
Make a
judge.
correction. By the way, I'm a father. I'm acting like a father.
Well, I can't act like an astronaut since I'm in court. But
And if you don't act like a lawyer and you don't follow the rules, then you're not a lawyer. You don't say
Exactly.
you're going to lose. I mean, we had Judge Joseph here in Suffolk County. The same thing. She was abusive to pro se litigants, and she just didn't like a certain person. But because she got so pissed that everyone was fighting back at her, she overstepped her bounds and ended up declaring a mistrial. So I tell people, like I know you were upset about what's going on. You said you're getting emotional.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come to the realization that you're at the end, you can't lose more than losing your kid.
Absolutely.
You're not going to lose your parental rights, and you're not going to pay more than the child support. So fight back. You got nothing to lose.
Absolutely.
You're in a good position because they can't do more than take away your kid. So it's always the mistake of the judge, I'd
He
say,
should
to
wait a
take
while.
everything away.
You should see this through a little bit longer.
Oh, you're
before he
not
makes
done.
that
He's not at the
decision.
end of his road. Fight
Not at
back.
all. Not at all. No.
You know, fight back.
But we don't have much time left. But what I wanted to say is I was late to court one time, of half hour late. Half hour late, and this judge dismissed all my cases, all of them. Now the adverse attorney is late all the time and fails to appear. Nothing happens to them. The child is still in my ex's home. I'm still the one that gets abused in court, but I did submit a motion and I got all my cases back
Right,
to
because they know these things. Listen, the judges may be bad, but they're not stupid.
Right.
They want to keep their job. So if you just simply point this out, like you're doing now by speaking on Chris's show, they don't like this, and you're going to take this show because it's going to be on YouTube also, and you're going to share it. And some of your friends are going to take it and email it to the judge's Facebook or LinkedIn account. You're going to record it on TV or take a DVD or pull it off YouTube, and you're going to mail it to the chief judge. You're going to let them know that, hey, I'm not shutting up. I'm not going away. And now you got other people behind you because you have Americans for Legal Reform.
I always say, why couldn't you possibly say that, Your Honor, you're treating me like as if this is not my son. You can't stop me from protecting my son. And that's what you're doing.
You just want to keep preserving the record.
The problem is that I'm not, again, it gets to the point where I am not allowed to, if I say 2 words, I have to shut up. You do not speak unless you're spoken to. Sir, you are not speaking. Did you understand me?
But at that point, you should be writing letters now to the chief judge. You should probably get the transcripts and send them in and say, I never got to defend myself. The courts have been prejudiced. I never got my day in court. I never got due process. I was treated differently because I'm pro se. All these things, spell them out. Don't make a big long letter. If it's more than 1 page, just throw it in the garbage because nobody's going to read it. And just document it. Send it in and get out there with the story.
We're done with the end of the program. I want to thank you very much, both of you. Thank you.
I was just getting warmed up.
Yeah,
I
me
know,
too.
I can see
No,
that.
I'm getting better.
So we'll do another show on another day if you'd like. That's okay. But I always say,
I
society
stumbled.
can call itself civilized when it actually deprives one segment of that society over another, which is what's happening here. He's getting railroaded as a father, and for practically
Which is why shared
practically
parenting is
no
the way to
other
go.
reason. What?
Shared parenting is the way to go.
Oh, absolutely. And as a mediator,
Mediation?
what happened? You betcha. Everybody gets joint custody and mediation. Hello? Nobody goes back to give any money to the system because they're not relitigating. They were happy. They made the deal themselves.
It's sad because my ex is paying close to $700 an hour to take my child away from me. So
Well, I'm glad that she can afford
well,
it.
she
should
can
be able
afford
to
it.
give you some child support and alimony, maybe. I think that's what you ought to get out of that. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate that. You've been watching FIT TV, the program that brings you behind the scenes of our divorce culture. At FIT, you cannot get this information on your own, so we'll bring it to your TV every single week, whether you like it or not, right? My name is Chris DiMaggio. Thank you for watching FIT TV, and we'll see you again next week.